Hey everybody, it's Matthew. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at some good old music news today, and there was some big news yesterday that came out, which is that Live Nation and the U.S. Department of Justice reached a settlement in the antitrust case. So back in May of 2024, Live Nation was sued by the Department of Justice with the District of Columbia and 39 other states joining an antitrust suit against Live Nation that has continued all the way through to this time, and they were even about to bring it to a jury, and they settled out of court with the Department of Justice before things got underway to avoid any punishment for, violating antitrust laws. So let's take a look at what happened here. Using NPR for this, so they got good info. And it says, Live Nation has reached a tentative settlement with the Department of Justice over a federal lawsuit accusing the company of monopolizing the live entertainment industry. The settlement will be submitted to the court for final approval. The company's antitrust trial, which began a week ago in New York City courtroom, aimed to break up Live Nation and its subsidiary Ticketmaster. A lawsuit filed by the Justice Department, the District of Columbia, and 39 other states in 2024 accused Live Nation and Ticketmaster of unfairly wielding their power over concert promotion, artist management, venue operations, and ticketing services to shut out competitors. The Biden-era Justice Department complaint was moved forward under the Trump administration. In previous comments shared with NPR, Live Nation denied the government's claims, even though we know that's BS, and they are absolutely violating antitrust law. The government's lawsuit accused Live Nation of shutting out a competition in more than 60% of the amphitheaters it owns across the country, which is apparently 78 amphitheaters. In a statement shared with NPR, Live Nation disclosed that its amphitheaters will now be able to work with competing promoters and that those promoters can independently decide how to distribute up to 50% of tickets. Why not 100%? Amphitheater shows will also have a 15% cap on ticket service fees, but they own things besides amphitheaters, so I don't know how that's actually going to help. Let's talk about Live Nation and the things that it does with the fact that it owns venues. Now, we're talking about amphitheaters, but it owns other venues, so I don't know how that's really going to help anything. Also, 13 of their amphitheaters, that's like 15% of the amphitheaters that they own. In my opinion, is that a ticketing service should not be able to own a venue that it's ticketing in. That doesn't make any sense. That's a clear conflict of interest and makes it ripe for fees, which if fees are broken down with Ticketmaster, there's actually pretty big venue fees that get charged, and I'm wondering how much of that goes directly back to Live Nation when they own the venue. So a little bit unfair, and it's like 15% cap on ticket service fees. But, that's still, 15% is still pretty high anyway. So that the amphitheaters can work with competing promoters, and I guess that can maybe work, but it says distribute up to 50% of the tickets. So half of the tickets are still going to be sold through Live Nation or Ticketmaster, if I'm understanding that correctly. So I don't really know how this fully tackles the problem. In fact, I do not believe it does in any meaningful way. This just feels like we're putting a slap on the wrist, and guys have to make it look like you're at least trying to do something. Of course, their CEO said by giving artists greater flexibility in choosing their promotional partners and ticketing strategy while also keeping the cost of a concert more affordable to fans, we're putting more power where it should be with artists and fans. Sure, that's just regular PR nonsense. He said, according to the statement, Live Nation is divesting exclusive booking with 13 amphitheaters. It will also allow for more flexibility in its contracts with other venues across the country. Live Nation says the settlement will also include an 8-year extension of the company's consent decree with the Justice Department. These terms are meant to prevent the retaliation and other anti-competitive behavior on behalf of Live Nation. But again, they still own the venues, so the Justice Department did not respond to NPR's request for comment. Despite the tentative settlement, a coalition of 26 participating states plus the District of Columbia say they're rejecting the settlement terms and plan to move forward with their antitrust lawsuit. In a statement with NPR, Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays affirmed her support for continuing the lawsuit. The case against Ticketmaster is strong, and I am committed to seeing it through The settlement recently announced by the federal government does not adequately remedy the harm done to Arizona consumers in the live music marketplace, reads the statement. Arizona is prepared to continue litigating this case alongside our bipartisan coalition of attorneys general to hold Ticketmaster accountable in court and secure real relief for music fans. And Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota, ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Privacy, Technology, and Law, also issued a statement supporting the attorneys general who have chosen to move forward. That includes her state of Minnesota. The Justice Department's previous agreements with Live Nation failed because they did not change its incentives to enrich itself over fans, artists, and venues. Senator Klobuchar wrote, today's settlement appears to be more of the same. And I, in fact, do agree with that. Some of the stuff they said does not fully prevent them from doing things that are anti-competitive or overcharging on tickets to enrich themselves, because the ownership of most of their venues is not changing. And sure, they have them open to third-party stuff, but they're still going to be involved because you can't do all ticketing with third-party partners. Live Nation says it has created a $280 million settlement fund to address the participating states' damage claims. So far, NPR has confirmed that Oklahoma and Arkansas have agreed to the terms of the settlement. Of course, they have. In a statement shared with NPR, Stephen Parker of the National Independent Venue Association criticized the settlement. Live Nation's reported settlement amount of $280 million is the equivalent in 4 days of their 2025 revenue, which means they could potentially make it back by Friday, wrote Parker. The reported settlement does not appear to include any specific or explicit protections for fans, artists, or independent venues and festivals. He added that it is considered a failure of the justice system. So as far as I can tell from this, this looks like mostly performative things for them to just say, look, we're doing something, so don't sue us for antitrust violations. Here's some money. That's basically what they're doing. And like we talked about, the divestiture of 13 amphitheaters, whoop-de-doo, you guys own 78 of that definition, and plus several other venues that are not amphitheaters. So it's like they still have very strong ownership of venues, which is the main sticking point to me with their activity. It does not make sense for a ticketer to also own the venue for which it is ticketing. Because like I said, that seems like a massive conflict of interest, and it just gives them cause to basically ticket how they want with those venues. And that's not really being addressed. Even though they did this here, which can independently decide how to distribute up to 50% of tickets, only half of them independently, and a 15% cap on ticket service fees, which is a good start, but often tickets are still pretty expensive anyway. It does help because if you set a rate for your tickets as an artist, then it's only going to have 15% of that is going to be potential of being a service fee. So that helps a lot because there have been situations where service fees are basically the same or half or like 50% or higher of the ticket value, and that's obviously really bad. And that's, again, because if they own a venue, then they can charge higher service fees without anyone really being able to protest that. It's an 8-year extension, I guess, to continue with what they're doing. But again, this is really like a slap on the wrist, or they just lobbied to try to get it settled out of court instead of being in trouble, which indicates to me, I think they thought if they could continue to court, they would have been in a lot more trouble. It might have been very likely that they would have been found to be violating the Antitrust Act. But I mean, just so you guys understand the issues they've had. So we've seen the thing with them owning venues and being able to push up their service fees because of that. The real reason that it's created a problem is their exclusivity contracts, which it said something in here about that, and I forgot where it was. Yeah, more flexibility in its contracts with other major venues. And basically what they were doing is they would set up exclusivity contracts, especially with the venues that they owned, but not only with those, with other venues that agreed to use them as a ticketing service. Their exclusivity contracts would mean no other service could be used to ticket. And in some cases, some venues weren't even doing physical tickets at a box office. You could only get them through Ticketmaster, which obviously allows them to corner the market. and then they can set ridiculous fees, and there's not really anything you can do to protest. It's either you don't get to see the show or you pay an inflated service fee. And they would do kind of the same thing with artists, although there's not contracts there. An artist could come to a venue, and if it's a Live Nation venue and they're like, they don't want to use Ticketmaster or Live Nation would be like, well, then you can't play the venue and send them on their way, which is obviously uncool. It's like, oh, because we won't use your preferred ticketer, we just can't play. The venue can't do tickets for us. We can't. It's like, that's a big problem, obviously, and it allows them to be extremely anti-competitive. And the big problem with that is not only with them owning the venues, but forcing other venues and artists into exclusivity situations where you either use their services and have really inflated ticket prices, or you get nothing at all. And so I don't know, them opening it up a little bit might help, but it said 50% of tickets. Didn't say all of them. And it also means that there are still contracts with venues that they have. The 13 amphitheaters they released exclusivity from. That means all of their other venues, they're still going to have some type of contract, even though they're saying there's more flexibility. It really does not address their past anti-competitive behavior and the fact that they were probably violating the Antitrust Act with those kinds of behaviors. But now, because they've settled it out of court, it doesn't go to court, and they're not going to be held properly accountable for what they had done in the past. And so it's the same thing again. Live Nation still owns their venues and can still require that Ticketmaster be used as a ticketer, and they can still have high fees, even though they limited the service fee to 15%. We'll see. They'll probably figure out some way around that. Well, once again, the main thing here is that Live Nation and Ticketmaster have just barely managed to skate by once again and avoid any further punishment under the law, despite their long history going back 30 years of anti-competitive behavior. Anyway, guys, that's a major thing that happened this week, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment down below if you want. As always, don't forget to click the bell so you know when a new video is out on the channel. And I will see you guys next time in another video. Have a good one.